Hey, Mike with Aftermarket Assassins here. We've got the DynoJet Powervision 3 on this Can-Am X3RR. We offer this with our custom tunes on it for all the X3s, the 120s, the 144, the 2017 models, the 172s, and now the RR. We have other parts, exhaust, clutching, all sorts of things that you can purchase for these as well to go in with these and combine the right mods to get the right out of your machine. And that's kind of why we're here today. We're going to power this up, plug your key fob in, hit the start button, fire that up. And what we're set out here today is to show you how this works really quick. We'll show you how to flash a tune very quickly. There's instructions on that. We do have another video that goes a little bit more into depth if you need that on the Polaris stuff. It's the same basic procedure here. But really we want to show you how to get the most out of your X3 when you tune it. How to make sure that you're actually getting what you paid for and what that tune's doing and you're properly set up. So it's very important to us, and making sure that everybody's where they should be. So we've got the screen here. We're going to show you how to flash a tune. So normally when you plug it in, it'll bring up the flash tune menu right away normally. If not, just hit the center button, the big button, that'll bring up the main menu. There's flash tune. We got a lot of different tunes within this one, test things, but you know, let's click on this level 4. We'll have a description, so always hit the center button, have a description. Normally it'll tell you what octane you need, what mods, supporting mods you need, and then you hit the center button again, and it'll say, do you want to flash this tune? If you hit the center button one more time, that'll flash the tune in. That'll take about 8 minutes. Don't touch the power, don't do anything, leave it be. We're not going to flash it because we're doing a few other things in this video, but that's a basic process. Go through that. You want to pull the key out after you're done. The key fob, just pop that out, lay it down and let the machine completely power down, and then you can plug the key fob in and fire it right up and you're good to go. So let's back out and go into our gauge configuration and what we've got going. So we're going to go through all the parameters that you can configure in these gauges. I've got some pre-programmed in here already, so normally you won't have anything. We're going to go to the main menu again, hit that button, go down to Device Tools, Configure Gauges is what we want to go to. So I've got some things pre-programmed. Let's go to number 4. I've got 1. So normally it'll just say channel, 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 name all the different channels. We have 4 different screens, 1, 2, 3, 4. And each one has 4 different channels within it, so you can toggle 4 different gauge screens that you have, which is really nice. You can set them up as you need them and what you think per this video. So let's go screen number 4. We're going to go to this blank channel, so this just says channel 16, and we're going to go through all these different parameters for you. So we have accelerator pedal position. This is showing where your pedal is. That's it. Really, you don't need to see this unless you need to monitor this versus your throttle position. You can set your throttle position versus your accelerator pedal position. They'll be a little bit different, but they should, for the most part, be about the same, especially at wide open throttle. If you see that, TPS will usually dive on you. That means that something's going on within the tune and something's not set up correctly, or you're having some sort of TPS issue. If you think you are, that's a valid thing to see, but normally not something you're going to have an issue with. Air-fuel ratio, this is another module that we sell, the DynoJet wideband. This data logs actual AFR widebands out of it. It does require a bung welded into your exhaust, which if you buy your exhaust from us, we can do that for you. So this is something you're not going to normally have or need to view, and we'll kind of outline that with some different fuel trims later. Barrel pressure, this is your atmospheric pressure around you. This is going to go down as you go up in altitude, so that really has a play on boost output. If you're closer to sea level, your boost output is going to be a little bit less. If you're way up in altitude, there is some limitations so that the turbo doesn't overspin because it can only make up so much air, so you'll see a little less altitude at higher elevations as well. Battery voltage, great thing to view. Boost, and this is pretty self-explanatory on that. We'll go over boost in a minute. Charge temp, it's really good to view if you think you're having a boost leak, things like that. You see these charge temps really skyrocket. On the 120s, that's something that's very important, just because the charge temps get so hot on sustained pulls, especially if you're trying to do a longer pull on the tunes just for the non-intercooled. That's something great to view. We like to see that, 140, 150, 160, and on the 120s it's going to be higher than that, but those are decent numbers on it, and the lower the better. You know, if it can be around 110, these RRs run really cool, which is nice. The better it is. EGT that's calculated, don't even need to look at that. That's kind of out the window as soon as we tune it. It is valid for us to view, but not for an end user. Engine coolant temp, that is great to view because the factory gauge does not really show that. It just has the bars. Engine speed, you can view that. RPM is what that is. Gear, pretty self-explanatory there. Something you don't really need to know. Ignition timing corrections. So this is cylinder 1, 2, and 3. This tells us how much timing the ECU is pulling based on knock. So if you have engine knock, it will automatically retard timing, and this is saying how much. So we want that to be between 0 is optimum, right? 0 is the best. That means there's no timing being pulled. That means everything's happy. We've got enough octane. Our tune is set up correctly for fueling, or we don't have any boost leaks, things like that. So 0 to -3 degrees is acceptable. If you see -3, and sustained, I'm talking. If you flash a little bit more than that, okay, once in a while. We don't like to see more than that, but once in a while, if you see it, it's not gonna, do anything bad. It is pulling timing to save the motor to do what it needs to do. It's meant to do that, which is a safeguard. But 0 to -3 degrees is what we want to see. Ignition timing, that just shows their timing output for each cylinder. Injection count, not something you need to know. Injector duty cycle, you can see your duty cycle on all of these. Reminder that 100% duty cycle does not mean it's using 100% of the injector. So we can go up, this is a calculation, we can go up to usually about 125% before we actually see the injector lean out. And we can, on some other tunes that we have, the higher boost stuff on the 172 horse, we do push the injector duty cycle on the stock injector tuning. We have big injector tuning for those as well, as we will on the RRs shortly. But 105, we've ran there for a long time. 95 to 105 is usually what their race fuel tune is, and we've had 0 injector issues, and a lot of them out there running. That's what ours ran on most of the time. We had 0 issues. So injector pulse width, you can see your pulse width, not something you need to know. Pulse width pre-cylinder, not something you don't really need to know. Knock reference level, this is what the ECU uses to calculate how much timing it's going to pull. This is kind of irrelevant because you'll get some data noise within this, and it really doesn't show a good representation of knock based on your cylinder. We can see this for some other things and see if we're getting some noise from the clutch, things like that, but for you, not really a normal thing. Load actual, load target. These are more of a tuning standpoint as well. Under wide open throttle, you should see these be pretty close to each other. Again, not something that you really need to take a look at normally. Long-term fuel trims, this is under wide open throttle, usually under a long-term situation, how much fuel it's actually trimming. So it can do a few percent of fuel trims, basically adaption, auto tune if you will call it. That's going to make it go to the AFR that we're commanding at that point in time, and it'll try and hold that. So if you're having a major issue with AFRs, you think, you can view that under a wide open throttle situation if that's way out of whack. Normally they'll throw a code anyways, but you can see what percentage that is and how much it's pulling either way, if it's adding or subtracting fuel based on that. Manifold absolute pressure, we're going to go over this in a minute. This is really key on boost. We're going to go over all the boost things in a minute. Normalized map for VE, don't need to know anything about volumetric efficiency stuff for you guys. That's more for us, the tuners. Requested AFR, this is what we're actually requesting within the tune on the output, and this will vary based on some factors, but we want this, this is what we're requesting, what the ECU is going to try and trim to if their fuel trims are active. Not something you're normally going to need to see. You can look at it if you want to, but not going to help you much because you can't do anything about it. Requested torque, that's not something you really need to see either. That's going to vary, and really it's not a torque output thing. It's more of a requested torque inside the ECU, which is a little bit of torque based tuning within these. Sensor one ready, that's nothing. Short-term fuel trims, these are your normal little cruising around fuel trims. Normally at lower throttle positions where you're going to see short-term come into play, and again you can view that and see how much percentage it's kicking either way. Throttle position, we kind of already talked about that. That's your TPS. You can view what it's going on at the throttle body. target boost. So we're going to go over this again in a second. That's where your boost is commanded to be normally by us if we did your tuning. Tip in retard. This is spark tip in, not something you need to worry about whatsoever. VE, that's more volumetric efficiency stuff, nothing you need to worry about. Vehicle speed, self-explanatory. And last but not least, wastegate duty cycle final. This is one of the most important things that we'll go over when we get back to our gauges, and we'll go over our boost settings. So let's toggle back, hit the back button. Just gonna hit this. Fire it back up, we're losing power. Okay, so we're gonna go down to my third screen here, and this is what I would like to set up for most users as an initial thing to view. And this is really nice just because it allows you to make sure that your boost is there and that your wastegate setting is correct and that we don't have any boost leaks either. So manifold absolute pressure is MAP right on the top, and that's our absolute pressure. That's what we want to see, and that's your overall pressure in the charge circuit. Your target boost is going to read next to MAP. It's not going to be your boost. Your boost is a calculation of your MAP minus your barometric pressure, what your atmospheric pressure is around you. And that's what your boost is. That's what basically the turbo is making up on the other side of things. So MAP, target boost, those should be within 1 psi of each other at wide open throttle. That's what we're looking for. If they're not, we usually have a boost leak or our wastegate isn't adjusted correctly. That's where our wastegate duty cycle comes into play. We're looking for about 60 to 75% on that duty cycle. And if you're at altitude, that could creep up a little bit. That's fine. If you're not adjusted correctly, you will be a little bit higher than that as well. This is basically how much the boost controller is technically working to keep that wastegate closed. So you have an electronic boost controller, and you've got a manual spring inside the wastegate. So we're trying to help that boost controller as much as we can. We need to have the right spring pressure so that wastegate controller, the boost controller, can do what it needs to do. So wastegate duty cycle, 60 to 75%. Yeah, 80% isn't terrible. At altitude, if you see 85%, you're sitting okay as well. Not a big deal, because it does have a little bit more push at altitude to help that out. But if you're in the 90s, you really you need to tighten your wastegate up, or you have a boost leak, or you have a bad turbo, or charge tube is bad. Something's going on with your boost circuit. Your turbo isn't creating the boost that it should, or you just have too high of a tune for where you're at. So that could be another option. But shortening the wastegate is going to lower the wastegate duty cycle number. Lengthening the wastegate is going to raise that number. And if you're actually under, say you're at 45% at wide open throttle, and we always want to check this, it will come in, it'll bubble in. You usually hit 100 right away, and then it'll kind of settle down and plane out. And that's where we want to check it, is when that planes out under a wide open throttle pull. But if you're below, let's say you're 45, 50%, that's not good either, because you get a lot of surging. ECU doesn't like that. The wastegate's way too tight. It doesn't know how to regulate properly. You'll hear some noise. It'll just act real funny. You want to lengthen your wastegate within that. And we do tell you on our website what each tune should be at as far as crack pressure to get you set up and start that. They're very easy to adjust the wastegates on these. So it's not too bad to do between tunes if you're loading different tunes within these. So I hope that gives you a good idea on what's going on there with boost. We're going to scroll up, and here's my number one screen that we normally have displayed. We've got boost, wastegate duty cycle, your charge temp, and then knock cylinder 2. Cylinder 2 is the most likely to knock. That's usually what we want to view. You can set up another gauge screen that has knock 1, 2, and 3 on it. Then you can view all cylinders at the same time if you want to make sure. But knock cylinder 2, again, we want to see nothing more than -3 degrees. That's 3 degrees of timing that it's pulling under a wide open throttle pull, and that's best. 0, where it sits right now, is your absolute target. That's what we want to be at. But sometimes we don't always get that, especially on pump gas tunes where we're kind of pushing the limits. You will see knock based on your fuel a little bit, and that's okay. It's not going to cause any harm. So charge temp, always a good thing to view. But that's the basic rundown of this tuner and how it works and how to get the most power out of the tunes that you have for it. I hope that helps you. I've been tuning turbocharged CVT motors for quite a while. We do a lot with with different tunes to make sure our clutching's working right, making sure our clutching isn't interfering with our tuning. And we do a lot of different things and take a lot of time to do those things to make sure when you get this thing out in the real world, as well as data logging, we do a lot with data logging, that you're getting the most out of it. So I've been, like I said, doing this a lot longer than most in the industry actually, and especially doing some snowmobile stuff up in the north where we're at. The boosted CVTs are kind of a tricky thing. You have a lot of things going on, so we're pretty good at putting that package all together. And last but not least, like we just talked about, data logging. Push that round button, that's going to start your log. You can record up to 10 minutes. Nice to keep them shorter if possible. And then as soon as you're done making your pulls, doing what you need to do, push the button again, and it'll save that log. And then you can view all these parameters that we just went over. You can bring it to your computer, download the DynoJet software, and you can view all of those. We have a video if you go to the tech section of aftermarketassassins.com. I have a video on that and a brief explanation on how to go over everything and open everything within that. But you're going to want to use this video as well to kind of go over what you want to see and what parameters to look at. That way you don't have to view it on the gauge. You can always go back, check that log out later, and go from there. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.